Welcome to Guerrilla Sports Off Court. I'm your host, Liv Moods, and this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate or lower your monthly payments. Just head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save money today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
And it said he was, I don't know if we're live.
Yes, we are. Hello. How are you guys? Welcome to another episode of Off Court. I'm Liv Moods, and I'm joined by a very special guest today, Mike Singer. Mike, welcome to the show. And also, if you guys are not familiar with who this man is, he's done a little bit of everything, I would say, but most notably, in my opinion, just because of how cool this was, he is the author of Why So Serious? The Untold Story of NBA Champion Nikola Jokic. Mike, welcome to the show, first and foremost. And let's talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you came to be writing about the most mysterious NBA player maybe on the planet.
It's pretty ridiculous. I mean, I covered the Nuggets for 5 years, the Denver Post, from 2018 to 23 through the championship.
Okay.
I don't know if ever in that time I thought that I was going to end up writing a book and stepping away and,
So awesome.
digging deep on Nikola Jokic. I don't know if that thought ever crossed my mind. I think I knew that the potential was there just because how interesting he is and how little seemingly we knew about him.
Yeah.
And it was, my job, right, to learn and report and write and kind of be the liaison between the fans and the team as the beat reporter. And when I tell you it was so difficult to advance Nikola's story, like I'm not lying.
Imagine.
It was so tough when he didn't really want to share much. And, I would pride myself on having a couple big stories a year, and I would try to do it around the All-Star break. I would try to do it going into the playoffs. I would try to, make a big splash, once or twice a year. And so to, step back and then consider having to do like a 350-page book was pretty daunting.
Yeah.
But, you do the reporting, then you step back, you write the book, and, a year later, this is where I am. It just came out 3 weeks ago. And,
awesome.
And in the meantime, you asked me to say what I'm up to. I got hired by the Nuggets front office.
So awesome.
My running joke is that somebody decided I was good at research. So,
well, you really are if you can write you said 350-page book on Nikola Jokic, because I kind of want to talk, you've had so many different POVs on this Nuggets team, right? Mm-hmm. You talked about reporting for this Nuggets team or on this Nuggets team for 5 years. Then you kind of became an investigative reporter in so many ways, because Nikola Jokic, as you mentioned, does not share much about his life. He's not on social media. He doesn't have this big personal brand. There's a lot of athletes in the NBA that you feel like without knowing because of the way that they put themselves out there. Nikola Jokic is, I think, a player in the league that everybody wants to know more about, but doesn't. We don't have access to him in that way. So then you step into investigative reporter mode, and now you're like executive mode a little bit, which is, I know it probably feels weird for me to say that. You're like executive, oh, maybe that's too much, but that's the reality. You have kind of watched this Nuggets team from so many different POVs, and it's awesome. Which one is your favorite if you had to pick?
I don't know if I can say a favorite, but I will say that I think one led to the other, meaning I think that, those respective point of views that you just alluded to, I think that was part of the value, right?
Yeah.
I think that was part of the insight and part of like, hey, let's get a fresh perspective. Hey, let's glean your insight, whatever that is. And I'm not, claiming that I had a ton of insight, but whatever that is, can you help us in this capacity? So I don't know what my favorite was. I mean, there were really cool aspects of all of them. The beat writer, again, to be the primary, to be traveling, to have really trusted and valued relationships all throughout the organization. And I'm not going to pretend like Nikola and I are super tight. Like, I think that would be bogus to do that. We have a good working relationship. We did when I was covering him. I think he respected me because I kind of understood his boundaries. And I was like, all right, we're going to have a couple big stories. We're going to do that this year. And otherwise I'm going to give you your space because I understand how you care to be covered and care to be represented. He just didn't lean into that stuff, right? And then, last year I just decided that if I'm going to write a book on Nikola, there's no, I don't know how much I can bank on his participation.
Right.
Ultimately, I didn't have it at the beginning. And I didn't know. I didn't know if he was going to ever sit down with me. I didn't know if he was going to participate. But going to Serbia, talking to so many people, his coaches, his teammates, his friends, people from his family, ultimately Nikola agreed to sit down with me.
That's
and
so awesome.
gave me, I'll say, the most insightful interview I've ever gotten from him. Easily the longest interview, just stuff that he's never addressed before. And I mean, I had to, and what was really cool about the book process is that I knew where I was thin. I knew where I needed his input. And so it was super strategic how I approached that interview.
Yeah.
And I asked him questions that he'd never addressed before. And I think he appreciated it. I think he understood, he understood my tactic and my approach and what I was trying to get at, and he honored it. And again, because of that relationship, that prior relationship, he respected the work that I had done and then gave me just unbelievable insight. I wish it could have gone on for an hour, but that's kind of the fun of it, right? He gives you little breadcrumbs. It's like, what can you make of it? And so for anyone who's read the book, for anyone who's considering getting the book, I feel pretty confident that I, dispersed his gems all throughout the book. And I really think you're going to get a ton of insight on who he is.
I think the first question that I have for you, because it's something that I've actually talked about many times on this show, is the narrative that Nikola Jokić doesn't care about basketball. Does your book 1000% debunk that narrative?
Yeah. He just doesn't care about what we think he should care about.
He
doesn't care about, what other stars theoretically care about. And I will say, I'll pull back the curtain I got into a bit of a tight situation when I addressed this with Kevin Durant. I said, he just doesn't care about, the things that I said. I used the phrase American stars, and KD blanched me. He was like, what's American stars mean? And he went back at me. And I mean, it was healthy. It was a really good spirited debate that turned into a conversation, which ends up being a chapter in the book. But it became and ultimately I circled back with KD and I said, hey man, you were right. It's not American stars. It's just everybody's in their own entity. This is how this guy prefers to, navigate the attention in the spotlight. This is how KD prefers to navigate the attention in the spotlight. It's all, everybody's their own entity. To lump everybody together is unfair and probably foolish. So that was an amazing conversation with him. And I forget what your question was, but it was, did I debunk it? I definitely debunked it.
Love it.
Because he cares so much. He just doesn't care to tell you about it. He doesn't care about the validation. He doesn't need validation from anybody on the internet, from anybody, any talking heads. I guess I'm a talking head right now. He doesn't.
Listen, I am too, so it's all good.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He is indifferent. I really think that it is. Somebody asked me this recently. I think his approach to navigating it and dealing with the attention, which he never really asked for, is pretty healthy. And I think that it is. And I think that there's a direct correlation with the way he navigates attention and the media and all that stuff versus his success. I think anybody who wastes any amount of brains, but again, every person's different.
Of course.
But from his perspective, wasting any attention on dwelling on how he's going to navigate this stuff is unnecessary and useless.
And taking away from where his focus should be, which is his job, his family, the things that really matter to him.
That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about appeasing anybody. He doesn't care about his Q score. He doesn't care that anybody Googles him. He cares about his horses. I mean, that's what he cares about. His priorities are pretty crystallized, and I hope that people take that away, that he's not in it for any other reason. And he never even thought he was going to get to the NBA.
Right.
He said this publicly. He thought maybe he would top out in the Euro League. He was like, that might work for me. This was not that long ago. This was 10, 11 years ago. He was humoring the idea that maybe it would just be the Euro League. But then it was like a snowball. He gets to the States. His rookie year, he starts to build. His sophomore year, he's in the starting lineup. He's leading the breaks. He's doing all this stuff offensively. You're like, hold up. Even some of the players were starting to whisper amongst themselves, this dude might be the best guy on our team early. He
is exceptional. And I mean, I talk all the time on this show and with Nuggets fans about just he's the best player in the world. I mean, there's just no competition right now. He is doing things that you can't even describe unless you're just watch him play basketball. I don't even have words to describe this athlete. He is just exceptional. Does he know that he's the best player in the world? I would love to. I think based on what I've seen, he's exceptionally humble.
Yeah.
But does he have any idea the impact that he's got on his game?
Of course he does. But you said it. I mean, I think he alluded to this like a couple weeks ago. He said all this stuff, the shoes, somebody writing a book about you, all the attention comes when you're a little bit good at basketball. He deemed himself a little bit good at basketball. So
it's just so
that's
funny.
the best. That's the best we're gonna get. And that's fine. Who cares? Let everybody else talk. I almost think that that's a big portion of it. Like, if you just let your play do the talking, what do you have to say? And I mean, like, what more can you add? Yes, there's all these questions and insight that you want to know, but he doesn't want to share it. That's part of his strategy. He just, it's nobody else is privy. Nobody else should be privy to it outside of him. And that's how he's deemed it. And so, when I wrote this book, I didn't know that I was going to have his participation, like I mentioned. So I had to tell it from, 25 different vantage points. So that's why there's so many different chapters. There's 95 chapters. Each chapter,
I love that.
Each chapter is almost like a vignette or like an essay, like almost like a feature story at the newspaper. Even some of the stuff that I wanted to write at the newspaper that I never got a chance to. And so that was how I was going to write this book. With 20 plus minutes of his involvement, it was going to be everybody else sharing their perspective. And the amount of people that were eager and willing to share, I'm talking family, friends. I talked to 30 plus NBA players about him, and people that I had good relationships with that were eager to share more about him. And kind of pull back their anecdotes. And there's not one overarching thing. It's all these little moments that paint a picture of who he is. And I really hope that, in writing this, I hope I gave people a broader perspective that this guy this didn't just happen. This wasn't random. And the way he comports himself and handles himself is not random. There's strategy behind everything. And if he can clown on you while doing it, even better.
Yeah, you have covered this team for quite some time. You've been around this team for quite some time. So you've seen this team in many forms, and you've seen a lot of current and former Nuggets players go through this organization. Would you say that Nikola Jokić is one of the most strategic basketball players that you've ever come across?
Yeah, but I don't know who else I could compare him to. That's not even.
Is he even really comparable at this point? I mean, it just feels like he's not. And maybe that's why I'm already seeing some comments of people saying, I need to get this book, because I think so many people they want to know more about Nikola Jokić.
I mean, people text me every single day, people who have read it or I sent the book to, like, the first 100 pages, nobody has any idea about. And it paints a foundation of who he is, and it all kind of makes sense. I think everybody had a sense of who he might be, but this crystallizes it, connects a lot of dots, confirms a lot of things that I think you couldn't find elsewhere. In terms of players who are the most strategic, I can't speak to I don't know who's more comparable to him. However, some of the earliest teammates that I talked to, the Nuggets teammates, meaning Jameer Nelson, Wilson Chandler, Darrell Arthur, even one really fun interview was Juancho Hernangomez, Bo Cruz. It was hard to not mention Bo Cruz in the book, but I did not. I wanted to, but I didn't. I ended up having like a 45-minute conversation with Juancho over the phone. And then he's sending me all these photos from him and Nikola. Some of those photos are in the book. Like, Juancho was so eager. And Juancho's a really good example because, he was a first-round pick. He was not he kind of bounced around the league a little bit before he's playing back in Europe. But Nikola doesn't care about those things. He cares about who you are as a person and whether there's a connection there regardless of your title. If you're a good person, and I get into this, if you're a good person, or if you put your head down and work hard, if you have altruistic principles, if you don't have any sort of outside agenda, he's going to recognize it, and he's going to value you, and he's going to see the value in you. So if you have an ulterior agenda, it's probably not going to pass muster. Like this, yes, he's a brilliant basketball player, but he's also like a brilliant person. And I think that he's had to become a little bit more insulated and guarded in his. And that guard has had to be up as a result of this attention and fame that he never wanted, but he's kind of just come to him he never asked for it, right? He's almost backed into a 3-time MVP, maybe 4-time MVP.
Yeah. In my brain, he's definitely 4-time, but we'll save that for another show where I feel like giving more hot takes and opinions. But it's funny to hear you talk about him noticing the good in people and advocating and wanting those people around him. And I don't even need you to even make a comment about this at this point in time, but it's that makes a lot of sense hearing that from you, seeing how quickly him and Russell Westbrook have gotten in sync, because Russell Westbrook to me does so much for the community. He has been arguably a good human being, as well as he's been a great athlete. He's also just been highly involved in his community, and he just seems like a teammate that people respect. And so to hear you talk about how Nikola Jokic values almost who you are as a person over who you are as an athlete, and then to see him and Russell Westbrook, because it's not always easy to get a new player of that caliber and throw him in the mix with a Nikola Jokic and expect it to work and click.
Yeah.
But they found their rhythm and their sync pretty stinking quickly.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Multiple things can be true. If all that stuff you just said about Russ, in addition to the fact that he is a crazy competitor.
Oh,
and
gosh,
let's not
He's
discount
great.
the fact that Nikola is a crazy competitor.
Oh,
He
yes.
doesn't, like, I tried to share stories of that. I tried to allude to it. He's not going to tell you that, but you talk to people who's played against, and he's the hardest cover in the league. He has so many counters. He's so well conditioned. He's so strong. Talking to some of the fellow big men who also are from the Balkans, I remember Ivica Zubac told me that. He was just like, he's nearly unguardable. He has so many counters, and it's like very frustrating to deal with him. So
it would make me upset.
I don't
want
to. And like when he was a kid, every sport he would play. He would play volleyball. He played ping pong. He played soccer. Like he played all these things. He never wanted to lose. He was adamant about winning. He was like beyond competitive. And I think that a lot of that came from his brothers. When you're growing up with brothers who are significantly older than you, and they beat the ever loving what out of him,
of course,
on the court, just like messing with him. And I think that there's just an innate competitiveness about him that
you can see it.
It sets the standard and sets the tone for, and I can say this, it sets the tone for the organization. There's an innate competitiveness that he sets a bar extremely high, and it's on everybody else to kind of follow that. And how can you supplement that? How can you support him in whatever that means?
Yeah, I'm very excited to get this book and read this book, and hopefully I get to learn a little bit about the mind of Nikola Jokic, because we talk about the strategy that he constantly has, not just as a player, but just as a human being, it seems. But I also think we don't give enough credit, not you, I'm saying fans that don't know Nikola Jokic, we maybe don't give him enough credit for how smart and intelligent he truly is. I mean, we've seen now twice this season alone, we're
him calling out the defensive plays,
him knowing the play before it's even happening. He is 5 steps ahead. I always say that on this show. He is 5 steps ahead of other teams and players at all times, it seems. And so his intelligence is something that we don't really get access to. And I would love, I'm hoping in your book I get to learn more about that.
So I mentioned the interview with Juancho Hernan-Gomez.
Yes.
And Juancho, again, he's fighting for his NBA career. He's trying to make it. And he would get annoyed at Nikola because practices would be so easy for him. And Juancho's like coming back, working like 2 a days, 3 a days. And he's just like, when is this going to click? When am I going to see the results? Yada, yada, yada. And Juancho told me Nikola would remember a play from the beginning of the year, and it would circle back by the end of the regular season, and he'd still remember it. And so Juancho is just like throwing his hands up in the air. He's like, how can I compete with this? Like, yes, this dude works hard. Yes, he's really talented. But when you're that smart and you're that cerebral, Juancho can't even like, he's like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to try to work hard just to stay on the floor.
Let me do my best.
I don't know what, I don't know what he's supposed to do. And one of my favorite quotes in the entire book was a quote from Michael Malone. He sat down with me for about an hour in his office. He said, Nikola would get frustrated with people because they weren't on his same wavelength. They couldn't understand why he was supposed to be in a certain area, or why he was supposed to rotate here, or why he was supposed to slip that screen and read his pass and whatever. And Malone said that's the curse of being a genius. And it's really an interesting thread to tug on, because does Nikola have to lower his tolerance and have have a more accepting tolerance that people don't think the game and see the game like he does? And so on one hand, yes, you have a genius operating and, as the hub of your offense, but at the same time, not everybody's a genius. And how do you, again, support him? How do you bring the best out of him?
Yeah.
We always say he elevates his teammates. Look at the teammates that he elevates the most. Why has Aaron Gordon become so much better since coming to coming from Orlando to Denver. Aaron Gordon's a super cerebral player, and he reads the game. And AG told me that like he's never played with a big who reads and processes the game like Nikola does. And so you put smart players around Nikola.
Oh yeah,
it gets interesting.
Oh yeah, and again, that kind of goes back to my original thought with watching him get in sync with a player like Russell Westbrook as quickly as he has. There is a level of Russell Westbrook is also that type of player that he's smart. You know, there's you said the word genius, and not just be corny, but I kind of got goosebumps a little bit because that is a great way to describe his game. He is, and I think so much of the public scrutiny that Nikola Jokic doesn't pay attention to or care about. But of course, you know, when you love Nikola Jokic as a fan, you're like very defensive about what people say and think about him.
Yeah.
So much of the complaints that we get from the public about Jokic is that he kind of plays this cool, calm, collected ball, and it maybe looks like he doesn't care, or it looks too easy, or it looks, however, it's always the appearance.
The joke's on you. I'm like unequivocally, don't get played. Like he's punking you.
Yeah. Well, to hear you talk about the back end, I think people really need to, one, read this book, but hear what you're saying when you say, he may look that way to you, but everything is strategic with Nikola Jokic. He's a genius.
He wants to lull you to sleep. So in reporting this book, I'm in Novi Sad. It's a city relatively close to Sombor, and I'm sitting down with some of his earliest coaches. One of the earliest coaches slides me a USB. This USB contains 7 games of his when he was 17 that nobody's ever seen before.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, pull these games up, and I'm watching this dude. And he is the exact same player in terms of mannerisms, in terms of, the passes that he's trying to throw. You see when he gets annoyed with players who don't. And if they're not on the same wavelength in the NBA, then they're certainly not going to be in the same wavelength when they're 17.
Right.
So, the reason I brought that up is because there's a moment that I'm thinking back to one of these games where there's an inbounds pass and he's just kind of standing there like slumped shoulders, kind of lulling the defender to sleep. And then he like snaps and the guy inbounds it. And then he just pummels the interior defender in the post. And it's like, he played possum. He played possum and he punked you. And he's playing possum and he's punking everybody who thinks that he doesn't quote unquote care or work hard or is indifferent, it doesn't listen, isn't engaged. Like, it's just inaccurate. I mean, even talking to all the guys on the championship team, Reggie Jackson, I had a conversation with him and he goes, he's one of the most cerebral players I've ever been around. Being around him is mind blowing to just sit there and hear him process the game and think about it and talk out loud. You emphasize the word genius. I think savant is a better word. Mm-hmm. The guy thinks and processes the game in a way that I don't think we've ever seen. And I hope I get to that. I don't know. He would never admit it, but again, because that would give up some of the jig. But but I think I got it, some of it, and I really think people are going to appreciate it once they dive in.
Well, I am super, super excited to get a hold of this book and learn more about, honestly, maybe my all-time favorite player ever. I was a very large Carmelo Anthony fan growing up. That was like my player. Mm-hmm. I loved watching him play. Mm-hmm. Jokic maybe has stolen the crown now as my all-time favorite Denver Nugget. But I want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the evolution that you have noticed with this team. You know, you said you were a beat reporter for 5 years. We've seen a championship now. There's been lots of highs. There's lots of lows. Even in this season alone, there's been some highs and some lows, which is the nature of the sport, of course. What has it been like to see this Nuggets team evolve since you went from beat writer to investigative reporter to wearing, I mean, you've worn a lot of hats. So
I don't want to say investigative reporter because like it's giving way too much credit. And I don't know that it's accurate.
But you did a really great job at diving into an athlete.
Up to the reviews. That's up to the reviews.
Listen, then we're going to drop some really great ones because I am impressed just by your process alone. You know, you had to travel, you had to take risks. You said you didn't know if he was going to even be on board with this when you first started this project.
I didn't know if I was going to have a job on the back end of it. There's that risk.
So I'm giving you all the credit.
I did not know.
It is deserved for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the evolution of this team, I think that early on, I'll just speak to Nikola initially. I think he's learning how to be a leader. I think he's learning how to grow into the stature and the caliber of player and the foundational piece that he is.
Yep.
And so again, there's a curse of being a genius. At some point, you can't be so emotional. You can't be so reactive. You need to understand that that you need to be patient with people, and that takes time. I think Malone has learned a lot of those lessons too. And I had a really, really revealing and I'll say intimate interview with Malone where he's admitting to a lot of this stuff, that learning and growing and maturing as a coach, he's doing that simultaneously with Nikola. And that is awesome. And that's really hard to do when this guy Nikola is clearly a genius and the smartest guy in the room. So how can you help him? And Malone, he told me this thing where every practice he feels pressure. He's like, I need to be accountable. I need to have all my, ducks in a row.
Yep.
Because this dude is looking at me as the guy who is tasked with setting the agenda and setting a plan and how are we going to get this team better today. And that's a lot for Malone to have to navigate when this dude is like you can't, I think everybody feels this. There's no wasting Nikola. You have to optimize and you have to grow and develop and nurture and become a better team overall. And that's a difficult thing to do. And when I was on the beat, I used to ask Malone regularly, how do you make things not stale? How do you keep things fresh with him? Not even with him, just in general. And
of course,
it was a hard question. I remember Malone said, well, one day we played dodgeball and one day we just we kept it light. And this didn't make the book, but when I sat down with Malone, he told me, I think this was last year, they played dodgeball and he goes, I'll tell you, for some reason, Jamal and Nikola, they were gunning for my head. They just were coming at me and I had to duck and dive and they've never been more engaged in a practice.
There's that competitive gene you talked about.
But it's also how often you get to throw stuff at your coach.
Right.
And they were into it.
Of course.
So, and then just in terms of the evolution, I think that ultimately, I think we're always growing and it's there's a standard that we need to all collectively uphold when we have this dude. So in terms of the evolution, it was all right, well, now we're in the playoffs, beat San Antonio in 7 games. On the verge of the conference finals, that 2018-19 postseason.
Yep.
Then we're in the bubble and, oh man, we just 2-3-1 comebacks. Now we're in the conference finals again against the Lakers.
Fun.
There were pretty, almost linear steps. And then Jamal gets hurt and Mike gets hurt. And you need to recalibrate, and that's difficult. So now it's, and again, how are we handling the pressure of running it back?
Yeah.
How can we get another one? And so there are, I guess there's a lot of steps and a lot of tiers to the NBA that I'm relatively privy to. And in 2018, when I initially moved here to cover the Nuggets, they hadn't even made the playoffs yet. So every year that I've been here, the Nuggets have made the playoffs and beyond. So that was a long-winded evolution.
I love it. And honestly, I think just as sports fans, I do feel like there's an element of we get bratty and we get
complacent.
Yeah. And we want, once we've seen the best of our team, that's now our new expectation. And of course, it is unrealistic. I have to check myself sometimes and be like, Olivia, it's not going to happen all the time. You're not going to get a championship run all the time. But is there an overall optimism that you feel? You don't even have to speak on behalf of the Nuggets organization, but do you have an overall optimism of fans being able to just take a breath? This, this team probably better than most people. And I think sometimes fans, we just get impatient. We want what we want and we know what we want and we want it right now.
We won a championship 2 years ago and, we're still in, position to contend again. So would you have traded this 6 years ago? Would you have traded, knowing a title in 2023 and then in perpetual contention around Nikola? Would you have traded that when, we were trying to figure out who were the right pieces to build around, Jamal or Nikola or, former fixtures, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Paul Millsap? A lot of the right choices have been made.
Yeah.
Even Michael Porter, to your question about the evolution, Michael Porter Jr. is it's incredible what he's become.
Oh yeah.
Given all that, he's been through. And so it's like you get to a place that's so good and so competitive that now we're getting greedy, which we should get greedy.
I know, I'm super greedy.
We should get greedy.
I am.
We should get greedy. And, why should we not hold ourselves to the standard that we know is attainable? Why should we not be chasing that constantly? And anything settling for less, I think, is a disservice. Probably more to Nikola than anybody else, but a disservice to fans as well. So it's like, that's kind of where my head's at. And it's isn't it more fun when fans are engaged and fans are like, this is the expectation here. The expectation here is to win.
Yep.
Is that a bad thing?
No, it's not. And I actually love hearing you say that, because on this show, everybody that tunes into my off-court show knows I am nothing but a fan of this team, and I have been my whole entire life. I love basketball. It was my first love as it pertains to sports, and the Nuggets were my first team that I felt that attachment to when I was a little. Earl Boykins to me was the coolest player on the planet.
Where's he from? Do you know where he's from?
I don't.
He's from Cleveland, Ohio.
Really?
I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, I love that. But yes, Earl Boykins to me, that when I was young, he just, you attach yourselves to these players. And I've been a fan of this Nuggets team for a long time. And I'll sometimes get people that hop on and they're in the comment section and they're like, you sound like a hater. I'm like, what? I just want them to be great. I want our players to be great. I want the team to be great. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I think there is an element of greediness that fans get. And I think they're allowed to feel that way when they love and adore this team so much. All we want is for the team to be successful. Of course.
For sure. And when you win a championship, it's like you get a bug and you're like,
oh yeah,
let's do it again. So,
I've got the bug. I've been bit by the bug for sure.
Yeah.
And you have to be patient with the process. And I know that. And there's so much on the back end of the business side of a team that we don't understand. And I never will try to, but I have to sometimes remind myself, like, it's, you got to be patient with the process. Also, it's a very long season. And I actually hate saying that out loud, because I'm like, okay, every game matters. I don't want to hear it's a long season. That just irritates me more. But it is true. There's a lot of changes that go through a lot of the teams that we see. And I think something that's been interesting to watch evolve as well is just the talent across the Western Conference. It's pretty scarily competitive, and there's a lot of really great talent out there. Obviously, I am not biased in saying this. We have the best player in the world on our side, and I think when you have
to write a book about him.
Yeah, right? That's a really good idea. I think someone should write a book about the best player in the world. First of all, where can people find your book? Because we have plenty of comments of people saying, I need this book. Like, I think there's excitement around the fact that we can learn more about our favorite player. And that's huge, because he's kind of a mystery in so many ways. I
think the word that we used to describe him was enigmatic. He's just kind of an enigma. He's how do you describe him? You can't put him in a box. It's available everywhere. It's available on Amazon. It's available Barnes and Noble. Obviously online bookstores, independent bookstores, wherever. I saw Barack Obama put out his book list today. Come on, man. His favorite books of the year.
Jokic wasn't on there?
Come on, man. I thought he liked basketball.
What the heck? Well, Barack Obama, if you're listening, you know exactly which book you need for the holiday season.
Let's not undersell it.
Exactly. I guess we'll close with this. Any final things that you want to say about your book, about the process? This is your moment to kind of give yourself some credit, first of all, because what you did was amazing and probably not very easy. I think there's I could probably name 10 players in the league that would have been easier to write about just because they give you more access to their life. And Nikola Jokic, you had a tough task, but you did it. And so, it's exciting.
Again, I alluded to the 95 chapters. I really tried to give a lot of people a lot of things in this book, meaning, like I mentioned, I talked to 30 plus players. I talked to, I think, 4 different head coaches, had like in-depth conversation with 4 different head coaches. I talked to people at P3, which is the performance gym in Santa Barbara where Nikola went after he got drafted to get evaluated in terms of his physical metrics and his, body mechanics. Wow. So I tried to give that perspective.
Wow.
Then I have perspective from his dad that I don't think has ever been shared before. His godfather, Mishko Raznatovich, who's his European agent, who he's done some interviews, but again, I'm getting at stuff that has not ever been reported before.
Love it.
And there's a lot of news in there too. There's stuff about, trades that were nearly made. And there's stuff about, the Hoop Summit where he was kind of not really discovered, but he was kind of the Nuggets, opinion of him was underscored there. All the executives who sat down and talked to me, in Bulls president Arturas Karnisovas, in Wolves president Tim Connolly, in Nuggets GM Calvin Booth sat down. the amount of people that were willing to weigh in and share their perspective and the stories that I was able to tell as a result of those people, their willingness, their participation, I really feel like I gave a lot to a lot of people. And so it's not just for one, if you like Nikola, amazing. It's going to be for you. If you like basketball, if you like underdog stories, if you like people who reached places when they never even knew it was possible, I really feel like I gave a lot to a lot of people, and that was one of the goals. And I've said this a couple times, but I had one person in mind. If I did his story justice, then I was, and Nikola appreciated it, then I was proud of it. I don't really care what anybody else thought. And the fact that he said I did a good job with it. I mean, I've told him this. I don't know if he knows, that meant the world to me. For him to say that, I'm good. I don't know what other metric to gauge on. If the dude who you're writing about, who doesn't like sharing his story, appreciates how you shared his story,
you did a fantastic job.
Then I'm cool with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulate yourself. And I'll tell you congratulations, because that's a huge accomplishment. And, there's a lot of times where people get written about and they don't like the story that's told. They don't agree with how it was told, or they didn't like any of the things that were implied. And so for you to do it in such a way and have to really kind of, you had to go there, you had to find different things that you didn't otherwise have this easy access to. You really had to work super hard to get the information that you got, and then you told the story in such a way that you got the stamp of approval from Nikola Jokić. That's a pretty huge deal. So
yeah, that was sweet. I'm hoping to go back to Serbia. There's a chance I go back, I don't know, in a month or two to promote the book. And I know that people in Serbia are excited about it. That means the world. I mean, the fact that it's a lot of pinch me stuff. I think it was translated in 6 languages.
Wow.
It's nuts.
I mean,
insane.
Congratulations. I think you're going to forever be a part of the Nuggets organization. It seems like this is just, you're so good at what you do, and you have been for a long time. But every time, you're, like you said, one thing has led to that. I talked about the different points of view you've been able to see this Nuggets team, and it's all kind of led to the next thing. I think this is just, maybe you're calling in a way.
I don't
know. Who knows?
I definitely got lucky, super fortunate. And the fact that Nikola rubber stamped it and sat down with me, that was probably I like to think that the 5 years covering him and whatever our relationship was, the fact that it culminated in that, I didn't sleep the night before the interview. I was like, how are we going to kill this? How are we going to kill this? And so the fact that it turned out great, I'm very proud of that.
Well, and as a reporter, I can speak to the fact that you have to build trust with these athletes. They don't just trust every reporter. And unfortunately, in so many ways, the media has a bad reputation for not being on the side of the athletes all the time. So it speaks volumes that he was even willing to sit down with you. That means you have done your job in such a way that you've built a level of trust with these athletes. And that's massive. And that's congratulate yourself for all of the phases of this book, and the fact that the book was written, and the fact that it is available to all of you. I know you guys are in the chat and you're asking about the book. We had Cedric say, proud of you, Mike. Can we get the book in Serbian? I think you said 6 different languages, but what does that look like?
It is translated in Serbian. I don't know if it's available in Serbian in America.
Okay.
I don't know. I apologize. Maybe you have to go to Serbia to get it, or hit up one of your Serbian friends.
Yeah, right.
But it's definitely translated in Serbian. And that's it. Just a buddy of mine just gave it to Nikola's dad in Serbian, because he doesn't speak English.
Okay.
So he speaks Serbian. So that part was pretty amazing too.
Love it. Yay. Well, you guys make sure you check out this book. I'm actually going to be, I know exactly which family members are going to be getting this book for Christmas, because we've got some massive Nuggets fans in my family that I think would just be over the moon to learn as much as possible about Nikola Jokić. I already watch him with heart eyes just because of the nature of his game. And it genuinely feels like a privilege to watch Nikola Jokić play basketball. I feel like it is an honor to be able to be in Ball Arena and see his greatness firsthand. And so if I could read a book that makes me appreciate it even more, I am there. I am going to purchase this thing. It will be read, and I'm very, very excited. But congratulations to you on your success. And, maybe more books in the future, maybe? Is this the first of a few?
I don't know.
I'm hoping.
Let's just deal with one.
Yeah, right.
We're
one
2
step
weeks,
at a time.
Yeah, we're
one
2
step
weeks
at a
past
time.
Launch date, and now I got a different responsibility. It's how do we win again? So
there we go.
That's the goal.
Well, I love hearing you say that because, like I said, I've gotten bit by the greedy bug as a Nuggets fan, and I'm not mad at it, and I'm not going to apologize for it. But love this team, love this organization. It's been so fun to be a part of this Nuggets organization as a fan, and I look forward to talking more about them as the season continues. Because, like I said, long season. So Nuggets fans, we never get too discouraged around here. We're just excited to keep watching these boys play basketball. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Mike, thank you for being here with me. Make sure you guys grab his book. The formal title of this is Why So Serious? The Untold Story of NBA Champion Nikola Jokić, written by Mike Singer. So check it out. Get your copy today. Get it for a Christmas present. Christmas is right around the corner. I know I will be doing that for my family members. So thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. This episode has been presented by Trusted American Mortgage, and we will see you guys very, very soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.